Red Bull's 2026 car just got prohibited by the FIA, and what triggered the ban was something no one saw coming. The car passed every flexibility and legality test, but it secretly reacted to engine vibrations to generate extra downforce without a single moving part. It wasn't declared illegal when it was built. But once the FIA saw how it worked, they reclassified it overnight and shut the entire concept down. Subscribe now, because this ban doesn't just hit Red Bull. It might force every team to rewrite their 2026 car from scratch. Red Bull's 2026 Challenger, their first full ground-up machine in partnership with Ford, was meant to be a statement. Not just about dominance, but about technical reinvention. The team had already begun shaping the direction of the next era before most of the grid had finished decoding the rulebook. But now, everything has collapsed around one core concept: a band floor that no longer fits within Formula One's evolving legal framework. The controversy erupted when Red Bull submitted a routine compliance package for harmonic aero behavior, a new requirement under the FIA's 2026 regulations. This package included digital simulations showing how aerodynamic surfaces responded under vibrational energy from the power unit. In theory, this was meant to detect active flex or unintentional instability. What the FIA saw in Red Bull's data, however, was something entirely different. Something intentional. Something repeatable. At the center of the scandal was a structural system built into the underfloor. It wasn't a flexible wing or a pressure-reactive panel. It was a carefully engineered composite layer invisible from the outside that subtly adjusted airflow patterns by using the engine's natural harmonic frequencies. When Red Bull's new Ford power unit entered specific torque bands, it caused the floor's internal structure to resonate. That resonance redirected airflow underneath the car and increased downforce at mid-corner speeds. No buttons. No electronics. Just raw vibration turned into performance. In isolation, the design was a masterstroke of modern engineering. It didn't break any rule as written. It didn't include moving parts. It didn't rely on driver input. And that's what made it so dangerous. The floor was entirely passive, operating on natural physics, and therefore, nearly impossible to detect under standard inspections. Only when the FIA introduced a new compliance simulation that mimicked engine load-induced frequencies did the system reveal itself. Once exposed, the implications were too large to ignore. Red Bull had created a passive system that functioned like active aero, a design that dynamically enhanced grip based solely on engine behavior. If left unregulated, it would force every other team to rush into an engineering arms race that few could afford or even match. The FIA knew they were staring at the beginning of a new gray area, and they acted decisively to shut it down before precedent was set. The ruling came quickly. After emergency discussions inside the FIA's technical advisory group, the design was labeled as aeroreactive under power unit harmonic influence, and declared illegal under revised Article 3.7.2. Red Bull was informed that any use of the structure in its current form would result in disqualification from homologation. The ban wasn't just a rejection of a part, it was a rejection of an entire idea, that materials science could be used to interpret engine noise into aerodynamic function. Now, the fallout begins. Red Bull's 2026 chassis was built around this concept. Suspension settings, ride height parameters, energy deployment strategies, all of it calibrated to a system that no longer exists. With the clock ticking toward preseason testing, the team faces a complete recalibration of the car's performance model. And more dangerously, this decision sends a clear message to the rest of the grid: if you innovate too far ahead of the rulebook, you might just get banned for being right. What hasn't been widely reported is that Red Bull didn't hide this concept. In fact, they disclosed every layer of the floor's construction to the FIA, right down to the composite materials and structural diagrams. The issue wasn't what they showed. It was what they didn't realize they had created, a system that passed every conventional test, but only failed once the FIA added a brand new compliance procedure never before used in Formula One. That procedure? Harmonic resonance simulation under live engine frequency input. This new test, introduced quietly as part of the 2026 rule harmonization process, examined how various car components behaved under internal system energy, specifically vibration caused by the combustion cycle. During this test, Red Bull's floor exhibited a pressure shift in the underbody airflow pattern. It didn't move. It didn't flex. But it reacted. That reaction, invisible in static tests, was clear when the engine passed through very specific harmonic bands frequencies between 40 and 70 Hz, which matched Red Bull Ford's mid-corner torque range. The floor contained no electronics. No mechanical actuators. It worked purely through layered resonance tuning, a method used in aerospace but almost never applied in motorsport. Ford's advanced materials team had collaborated with Red Bull to build a composite stack capable of reacting subtly to internal vibration. The idea wasn't to bend or reshape. It was to alter stiffness and micro-resistance in a way that rebalanced airflow under dynamic load. The result was more predictable downforce without sacrificing drag or tire life. This wasn't an accidental side effect, it was a design philosophy. The Red Bull-Ford collaboration aimed to exploit an overlooked frontier in F1, how the car behaves internally, not just externally. Traditional aero focuses on wings, ducts, and body surfaces. This system looked inward, asking how the car's internal energy could do aerodynamic work passively. In doing so, they found performance that others hadn't even considered. And once they found it, they embedded it into the car's foundational design. The floor was codenamed Echo inside Red Bull's engineering department. It referenced how the material responded to sound energy, specifically engine resonance. Early models showed that even without any aerodynamic changes elsewhere, the Echo floor alone could generate between 100 and 130 newtons of extra rear downforce in loaded corners. That's roughly equivalent to 0.3 per lap at tracks like Suzuka or Silverstone. Legal under every rule until the FIA redefined what passive means. That's the twist most fans haven't heard. The FIA didn't ban the system for how it was built. They banned it for what it did. Once they saw the data and understood the floor's repeatable behavior, they reclassified the system as a non-permitted aeroreactive structure, using a clause that allows reinterpretation if a part delivers performance by exploiting energy not accounted for in the regulations. It was a post hoc decision not rooted in law, but in philosophy. That's what makes it controversial. And now, the rest of the grid is on alert. Because if a floor can be banned after passing every test, what other systems' power unit mappings, suspension behaviors, even tire heat profiles might suddenly become targets? Red Bull pushed the boundary without breaking it. But the FIA redrew the boundary underneath them. That's the kind of ruling that doesn't just affect one team. It ripples across the entire sport, especially in a season where everyone is gambling on unseen innovation. Red Bull's Echo floor wasn't just a clever device. It was the first serious attempt in Formula One to weaponize the natural language of energy. Rather than relying on hydraulics or electronics, it used the rhythm of the engine, the pulse of combustion, to adjust aerodynamic behavior in real time. That concept hadn't existed in Formula One before. What made it so dangerous to the status quo wasn't that it bent the rules, it was that it used no tools at all, just raw physics embedded in structure. The breakthrough came when Red Bull's chassis department started mapping the harmonic signatures of the new Ford the 5th-6 engine. They discovered that at specific RPM bands, the engine generated repeatable vibration patterns, not violent shaking, but subtle, rhythmic waves that traveled through the car's structure. Those waves, if harnessed properly, could be tuned to interact with materials layered in the floor. It was the kind of innovation that only comes from asking a question no one else thought to ask: can vibration act like a control system? Ford's composite engineering division provided the answer. They helped develop a multi-layer underfloor, with carbon, resin, and polymer blends arranged not for strength but for response. Each layer was calibrated to a narrow vibration band. The result was a system that stiffened or relaxed based on the engine's frequency load, subtly shifting the aerodynamic profile beneath the car. These shifts happened at a microscopic level, far too small to be picked up by traditional flex tests, but the aerodynamic impact was undeniable. In simulator testing, Red Bull discovered that the Echo floor gave the car a critical advantage in high-speed corner stability. It reduced rear-end yaw by keeping the diffuser more planted at moments when traditional aero became unstable, particularly at liftoff and initial throttle reapplication. Drivers reported feeling more connected to the track. Balance across fuel loads became smoother. The car was more forgiving not by changing setup, but because the floor reacted with the car, not against it. But that's exactly why the FIA became nervous. Because the system wasn't static. It responded. It adapted. And that adaptability, even without control input, threatened to unlock a new generation of aero systems the FIA had no framework to contain. Allowing Red Bull's floor to stand would open the door to passive intelligence engineering, a frontier where materials themselves become performance tools. That blurred the line between what is passive and what is active. Between legal and philosophical gray. The FIA's move was strategic. By banning the ecosystem before it ever raced, they avoided a situation where half the grid would scramble to reverse engineer the concept while the other half protested its legality. More importantly, they avoided a rule war during the first season of new regulations, a period where Formula One already faces pressure to prove it can balance sustainability, performance, and fairness. Red Bull didn't just build a fast car. They built a car that revealed what the rules hadn't anticipated. Now, the team must rebuild around a new reality. The 2026 car was shaped with the Eco floor at its core. Geometry, ride height targets, power deployment maps, all of it will need to be rewritten. They won't be starting from zero, but they've lost their strategic centerpiece. And in a year when every tenth of a second will matter, this isn't just a design setback. It's a disruption that affects the team's psychology, confidence, and ability to innovate freely. Red Bull bet big on physics. And the FIA just reshuffled the table.